Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our final episode of the Med series. This is Let's Talk Science, Declassified STEM Survival Guide podcast. My name is Ramir.
And my name is Audrey.
And once again, the goal of this podcast is to talk about the possible career paths one can take in the field of STEM and the challenges one may face in navigating the STEM world. Welcome to the sixth episode, as I said earlier, of a podcast series, the Med Survival Guide. In this episode, we will be talking about what it's like to be a physician with Dr. Cheryl Rockman-Greenberg.
So Dr. Cheryl Rockman-Greenberg is a clinical and metabolic geneticist and distinguished professor in the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health and Department of Biochemistry and Medical Genetics at the University of Manitoba. So in 2012, she was in the top 100 of Canada's most powerful women by the Women's Executive Network. And in 2018, she was inducted into the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame for her research on treatment of hypophosphatasia. She also contributed to the development of targeted newborn screening programs for people in Manitoba at risk for rare conditions such as CPT1 deficiency that is overrepresented in Hutterite communities, and as well as glutaric aciduria type 1 newborn screening for the OG Cree. All right. Hello, Dr. Cheryl Rockman-Greenberg. How are you today?
I'm okay. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you on our podcast. So as mentioned, you are a physician, more specifically a clinical and metabolic geneticist. So what or who inspired you to pursue a career in medicine?
Okay. Well, I think I really, first of all, I want to thank you very much for inviting me to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's not easy to talk about oneself. And, you know, when you ask me to do this, it always causes me to think back and reflect about how did I get to where I am today. So these are important parts of career development in itself, is to stop and look back and think about how you actually get to where you want to go. And more importantly, you know, ask myself again, in thinking about this podcast, you know, am I today the kind of person that I thought I would be and that I wanted to be? The answer to that really is yes. But, you know, it didn't happen overnight. And there are obviously many people who inspired and helped me along the way. The first thought about pursuing a career in medicine did not happen until I was 19 years old, and I was working in a lab at McGill University because I grew up in Montreal, and I knew I always liked science. But, you know, it never dawned on me that I could have a career in medicine. Just to step back a bit, you know, I turned 70 years old today. Not today, this year.
Oh, happy belated birthday.
Actually, I turned 70 in September of 2020. So I was born in 1950. That's a long time ago. Now, I don't feel 70, although I'm very happy I have made it to 70, and not without its challenges, but we all have challenges. But, you know, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. In the first a decade and a half, this was before even the era of Medicare, of socialized medicine in Canada. You know, life was so different then. And, you know, I was from a post-war, you know, second generation Canadian family, hardworking family, very strong extended family, but nobody in my family had ever gone to university before. And on the other hand, I had tremendous role models as parents and grandparents that education was very important. So it didn't matter what else I did, you know, education was really important. But I went to high school in Montreal. I knew early on in high school that I liked science. I really liked science. In those days, I did biology, I did chemistry. I liked science. And I also like sports. I like to be active in sports, but I didn't think I was going to pursue a career in sports. That was not my calling. But I like science, and believe it or not, when I started my undergraduate degree, because I was encouraged by my family to apply to university, an undergraduate first year at McGill University, where I started in 1967, the tuition was like $600 a year, and
Wow.
we were not a very well-off family, but it was very reasonable to go to university, especially if you had a summer job. But because I liked science, my friend and I, who shared my interest, decided we were going to apply to physiotherapy and to the School of Physiotherapy, now called Physical Medicine or Medical Rehabilitation. And I started at McGill as an undergraduate in the School of Med Rehab at McGill in 1967. By January of 1968, I knew that I wasn't happy. I knew I couldn't see myself becoming a physiotherapist. I'm not sure, when I think back, what was it I didn't like about it, but it wasn't my calling. And it was a real crisis for me because I didn't know what to do. But in the end of the day, I decided to go back into just undergraduate science at McGill University. And, it was a very traumatic experience because I always had a career plan that I was going to do something in science. And suddenly I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And it was unsettling. But I applied and I registered in an Introduction to Human Genetics course. And it was the very first course that I did. And it was taught by Dr. Charles Scriver and Dr. Clark Fraser, who ultimately became my mentors. To this day, I revere them really. And after my first class, I said, I want to do that, And I was at that stage in 1967, that was 1968. I was just turned 18 years old. And I asked Dr. Scriver for a summer job. And he gave me a summer job. And I worked for over 2 summers for Dr. Scriver in the biochemical genetics lab, and was right adjacent to Dr. Fraser's Department of Medical Genetics. So I had exposure to all aspects of medical genetics, which was just a developing specialty at that time, and biochemical genetics with hereditary metabolic diseases. And one day, Dr. Fraser brought me into his office and said, Cheryl, have you ever thought about applying to medicine? I said, no. It never dawned on me. He said, I think you should consider it. So he, in his, a very supportive way, and I have never even thought about it, had me speak to some of the counselors involved in the admissions to medical school. I read about it. And that was the first time I really realized if someone whom you respect makes a suggestion, then you have to really listen and take it seriously. He obviously saw something in me that I didn't even know that I even had, even the capability of becoming a doctor. But he planted the seed. I spoke with lots of people. I applied and I got in. I was accepted. I was overwhelmed. And I was a bit conflicted because I love genetics. I wanted to do research. But he certainly encouraged me to go. And I did. And really, medical school at McGill was the best years of my life. But I owe it all to Dr. Scriver and to Dr. Fraser.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a long answer to your first question. Sorry.
No worries. Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah. It's really nice to have, mentors like that.
Yeah.
And that it's really good that, like you said, they saw something in you and then they suggested for you to go there. And now you are here.
Or today.
And that's really the story of my career. People have in every phase of my career, saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. It's not that I, didn't see potential in me, and I didn't have career goals and career plans, but I didn't aspire to, professional advancement and career development. I just wanted to do a good job in whatever I was doing at the time and do the best I could. But, the mentors are absolutely critical. If somebody, to help guide you. And again, I want to stress, if people see something in you that you don't see in yourself, you still have to take it very seriously and listen carefully and go with it.
That whether it be positive or negative, right? So,
Yeah.
I think that's very true.
Mhm.
I mean, not everything is positive. You have to, but when you have a good relationship with a mentor and they're honest with you, they're not there to sugarcoat everything. They're there to provide you with, very down to earth advice, but also advice that is, appropriate to where you are at in your stage of life.
absolutely. And I'd just like to ask you, like you said, this was in the 50s, 60s, and around that time, things were very different compared to now. Tell us a little bit about, as you mentioned, there were challenges, of course, that were present during that time, and you still were able to, do the things that you did during that time. How did you encounter and overcome the certain challenges that life during that time have brought you?
Well, I guess it's now time for me to make one true confession. Okay. I was absolutely motivated by the lessons my parents have taught me. But at the same time, you have to understand that my life changed when I turned 14, because in 1 week, I learned that my mom was actually going to die. Okay. And honestly, I've not really talked about this at all. It's something that I've carried with me my whole life. But my dad sat my brothers and I down one day, and I knew my mom had been sick for about 8 years, but I never knew what was wrong with her. But he told me that she had very extensive bowel cancer and she wasn't expected to live for another week. And I was absolutely floored. I mean, I had no idea. First of all, I had no idea what cancer was. I had no idea that a mother could die. And I had no idea why my father chose to withhold this information from us. What was he trying to protect? Because I don't know if I would have been a nicer preteen if I would have slammed fewer doors, or if I would have fought less with my brothers. But that was a pivotal moment in my life. Losing your mom when I just turned 14 was a terrible experience. But I tried to turn every negative experience into something positive, because what I couldn't give her, and with the mentors that I had through Dr. Scribe and Dr. Fraser, and forging a career in medicine, I was determined to try to give back and help people in a way that I couldn't help my mother, but also in a field that I knew that I was interested in medicine. But that was a real pivotal moment, and it's not something that I forget anymore. So I actually forget what you asked me.
It's just, how did you overcome, and what type of challenges?
So I took the challenge of thinking and missing my mother every day. And also keep in mind, I lost my dad when I was 19. So my brothers and I raised ourselves, and I was really again, we didn't have much in terms of money, and my father worked very hard, but losing both parents, at a time when it could have turned into something catastrophic. All of you, anybody who's listening to this podcast, many people have lost parents, lost loved ones. And how do you get the strength to keep going and turn a negative experience into a positive experience? But I was determined. I don't know where I got the strength to do that. All I knew that I had to honor my parents, and I knew that they would want me to do the best I could. And with the mentors that I had encouraging me all along the way, and a little bit of luck, and then it worked out. Not without a great deal of effort and work. I mean, obviously, I've worked very hard, but I was very focused on what I knew, what was important to me, and how I had to live, my professional life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
And I'm sure that, of course, both of your parents are very proud of you, and that, and I could not imagine what that must have been like. So.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest. I've always said they're watching me from the Red Rock, wherever that is, but it is what it is. Many people suffer, and particularly in times of COVID, how difficult this time it is. Many people have suffered tremendous loss and tremendous tragedy. And how do you turn a negative experience into something positive that will allow you to carry on in life? It's not easy, but nobody can do it alone. That's another important message. You have to surround yourself with people, who will help guide your way.
Absolutely. Agreed. Yeah. And to anyone who's going through the same, struggles or encountering, any type of problems right now, just you can get through it, right? So like Dr. Greenberg has gone through it. So moving on now from you've decided you applied to medical school, which is McGill, right? That's where you went?
I went to medical school at McGill, yeah.
So what is something that medical school has taught you about yourself, your community, the world around you, or the life that you didn't expect to learn?
Well, medical school was one of the best experiences of my life. But what it did teach me was, if anything, humility. How humbling it is to have the opportunity to learn to be a doctor is something that I never took for granted. I always felt it was a real privilege. And so humility, and you knowing that you can learn from your patients. Like most of the things you learn in medicine, I can tell you 70% is what you learn from listening to your patients. Okay. 20, maybe 70%, 25% is probably from the internet, and reading and thinking, and only 5% is probably what you learn from books. But medical school, taught me humility, taught me to listen to people, and to make sure you put patients first and foremost, in your decision making. So, and regardless of what I did in medical school, whatever rotation I was doing, the focus from my teachers and from everybody within the healthcare profession was that we learned about respect for the patient. And that was a lesson that I tried to, certainly it resonated with me completely. And it's something that, has stayed with me for my whole life, really.
Wow. You talking about humility and things that you've learned through medical school. And you mentioned rotations. Did you have an experience during your rotations where you had an interaction with a patient that sort of changed your view in your career?
I thought you were maybe going to ask me also, did I have any negative experiences?
Yeah, perhaps that as well.
My experience with my patients have always been, very important for me and have formed many aspects of my career. growing up and as a resident and specializing in metabolic and genetic diseases and training in Montreal at Montreal Children's Hospital and at Saint Justine in Montreal, you saw, lots of things that you do not see today, and, I realized, what medical advances has done, to shape our healthcare system. Like nobody today will see measles. Well, not will see diphtheria. Well, I saw diphtheria. I saw polio, and I don't want to say this to age myself in any way, but that was, I saw more. That's what happened. I saw more meningitis, than I would ever want to see. But it was a very busy time. You worked very, very hard in a residency, and you make mistakes. And there was one mistake that I did make, that to this day I remember and I regret, because I believe it probably cost that patient his life, And what I do remember is being incredibly tired, and obviously I was a little bit burnt out the day that patient came in. And what I learned from that is as hard as I knew I had to work, and we were worked hard, I had to be sure not to be afraid to ask for help when you're too tired, and say, listen, can you cover for me? I just got to go lie down for an hour. I have to sleep. And again, everything you do, whether it's in medicine or outside of medicine, you can't do it alone. You have to network with people and work together with people. So that was a negative experience, because I don't know if I was too proud to ask for help, or it just wasn't done in those days. You just worked, you just had to work very, very hard. But I learned both from myself and over the years, as I've been in positions of leadership, to make sure the people who reported to me understood that they could come to me with anything, ask for help for anything. I would never pass judgment, and I would do my best to help. So, again, I think you're getting the message that I've always tried to turn negative things into positive things, and that's, to me, the only way I can survive, really. I've had wonderful experiences in helping patients. And, one of the things that I always said is that the reason I've enjoyed my work so much as a doctor and as a researcher is I can enjoy it the most when I feel that I'm actually helping people. And that's, to me, what medicine is all about. Now, don't get me wrong, medicine and being a doctor is absolutely critical. But for those of you who are considering careers in medicine as a career involves so many different aspects. There's much more to medicine than just being a doctor. You need to have the infrastructure, people who are doing research, lab technologists, mathematicians, people who understand artificial intelligence, people who understand and can teach me how the internet works. You enjoy your work if you can help others. But I've needed to have a large group of people around me and who have helped me every step of the way. And, Dr. Postal, who's the current dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences, always said that the whole should be greater than the sum of its parts. And that's true. You get the most out of your profession, out of your career, if you can work collaboratively with people around you and not to be afraid to ask for help. I've had many highs in my career. You asked me any wonderful memories, many highs when you've been able to participate in the development of a treatment for a disease that had 100% mortality, and you turn an untreatable disease into a treatable disease. I've only worked in my life in rare diseases. And so you don't get the opportunity to really affect change when you're dealing with an ultra rare disease that's not treatable. But it's happened to me, and it's been incredibly satisfying and incredibly motivating. to turn an untreatable disease into a treatable one. And so that's always been a motivating factor to try to help. And if you happen to find something that's actually going to be able to change the natural history of a severe disease, wow, that's a real bonus. It's a good feeling. It's a very good feeling.
But absolutely agree that,
Yeah.
it'll be easier, most likely with other people, right, in a group. So
Yeah.
You have to have it. Yeah, no matter where you are in your education, in your training, in your work, nobody can do it alone. You always need a team of people around you. Listen, as you're studying in your own careers now as students, I'm sure you have study groups, right?
Yeah.
we have group chats now, we have on the
Yeah.
internet, yeah, where we just send. It's really
Yeah.
quick too. We just send our practice exams and then we ask questions there. So
And we help each other out, especially during this time, online school. So
yeah. So
I honestly feel for you as students and all the students during COVID-19. I can't, I find it hard enough myself, to be so isolated and, not being right in the thick of things with people all around me. But I know that for you guys in developing your education careers, I really feel for you. All I can say is, if you've done this and made it so far, then it's only going to get better.
yes,
Yes.
thank you. And we're pretty close. We're getting vaccinated here in our province. So
yeah.
The students at university are eligible for your vaccinations now, even at a young age now.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
So I just like to get back to you talking about that time, that experience, and you mentioned that it was because you were overworked and you stressed out and you didn't ask for help, and it's kind of like I can relate to that because I work at a restaurant also as a server. So that's, to be honest, I kind of think that me working at a restaurant, I could potentially share in like an MMI or something once I get there. But I always related to medicine because there's a lot of stresses that come to it. But of course, I have a team, for other servers as well, my managers, supervisors to help me out. But of course, there will be times where it'll be really stressful, it'll be burnt out, and not only in that aspect, but also as a student right now, especially during this time, I feel personally, I've felt burnt out and stressed, given that I have to adapt to the new ways of teaching because everything is, converted to online now. What can you say about, how to deal with stress or, burning out, and how do you work on your mental health as well as physical health? I think those two tie in together.
Very good question. When you talk about stress, there's so many different types of stress. There's personal stress, the stress you're going to feel as young people forging relationships. There's lots of personal stress. There's the moral distress when you disapprove of what other people are doing and it morally upsets you and you may or may not be able to do anything about it. There's societies, the stress of societies. I have a lot of, and many of young people, the stress of worrying about our world and society, whether it be climate change, whether it be anti-racism, whether it be STEM and increasing diversity in the workplace. I mean, there's so many challenges and so many stresses at so many different levels. And of course, the stress of the COVID pandemic, how you deal with these challenges, there's not one size fits all. The most important part is just to be aware that there's nothing wrong if you feel stressed at any level and challenges. And, you just have to find the way that will work for you to acknowledge the stress and find a way to deal with it, whether it be through physical activity and sports and running, whether it be yoga, whether it be reading, whether it just be walking. If you recognize that stress is inevitable, especially at this time, and you can talk about it. When I go online and I see all these possibilities of these chats and how to deal with mental stress and physical stresses, every step along your way in your careers now, there are people and facilities and organizations that can help you. I mean, most people, I don't think, necessarily know all the services that are out there to help people. And helping usually means just having somebody to listen to you and to talk to. There's no magic bullet to relieve one of the stresses that everybody is feeling now. Me, the only thing that has worked is that to surround yourselves with some people who share your stresses and don't pass judgment and are willing to listen. But everybody is feeling stressed now. And I mean, you and Ramir and Audrey sound very motivated in terms of your career plans. But I think of all the students who may be listening to this podcast, and it's so easy at this time to lose one's enthusiasm, to say to drop out, not to continue. And how do you find that inner strength to keep going? But, it's well worth it in the end. It's well worth it in the end. It's not going to be easy, but there's so many ways I see in the system now that are accommodating people who are feeling such stress. My fellow researchers, we get notices that, automatically the faculty is going to extend the contract of research support people, our technicians in the lab, because we haven't had the time to produce the results because of pandemic and people's pressures at home. And, we've had to, I am very, supportive and lenient to help people who work with me to make sure, first and foremost, that things are stable at home. And if you have to take a few days and you have to be home, that's fine. So it's just a question of working together to get through this difficult period.
I agree. I think our team at Let's Talk Science, it's not just a one-man show. We have like 7 of us, and I think I'm grateful for everyone on our team because we support each other and we know the stress of Let's Talk Science and preparing all those outreaches. But yeah, I can definitely agree being able to find that support system because it can be very stressful. Yeah.
So my question to you and to Ramir, when you apply, you've told me that you are interested in applying for post-secondary, medical schools and, and higher education. Do you feel safe enough to put on your resume how difficult the last 2 years have been? In my old days, we would never admit that we had weaknesses or explain that we couldn't be productive in that year, because I had to stay home and take care of my brothers, it was not accepted. But to me, I think we've made so many advances within our university and for me, I deal mostly with the Faculty of Health Sciences, but there's so many ways of people being kind to each other and to allow you to be kind to yourself and to be open and honest about, of any stresses and sadnesses in your life that might have affected, whether or not you could write 2 more medical papers or, whether or not you were able to get an A+, but you had to settle for a C. I hope and pray that our system, with all the efforts being done through STEM, through EDI, through all the organizations, that we can have a little bit more of a compassionate way of supporting each other. And I could see, but everybody, is suffering in his or her own way.
You are absolutely right in that the system has made a couple advancements that allow students to be more comfortable now to apply with to be more confident in their resumes, and I think honestly, if anything, out of the whole team, Audrey, I'm probably like the one with the most, because I'm that type of student where in high school I was um kind of cruising through it and, oh, this is easy. And then the first year university, I just took full course load. I didn't listen to the advice, first of all, that was given to me by my mentors, which were already, who have gone through it. So I completely, just went my own way and I said I can do it. And then I didn't. So, now it's like, okay, now I gotta focus. But I think that there is now significance to that, because I listen to a lot of podcasts all the time, and most of these speakers, who some of them are from the team, the admissions team of medical schools, they say that they now look for trends in your transcript, right? Like if they see an upward trend, then they'll consider you still. And I think that you still have to work hard and you still have to show that you're capable. But just, 1 or 2 years where you're not doing so well, that does not completely define you as a student. It's kind of how I approach it. So.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I was, I have a book that I keep with, some newspaper articles or some interviews, and I was looking at one that came, I don't know, a few years ago when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I had many opportunities to speak with students from many different schools and a lot of medical students from across the country. And someone asked me, to give advice for the next generation. And the one thing I really did feel, and I think it's apropos here now, is to work hard, take some chances, but don't look back. Follow your dreams to the best of your ability, but have a backup plan. I listened to both of you, and you aspired to get into medicine, but you have to have a backup plan, because I appreciate it's very competitive now, and I'm not 100% sure that. I mean, I've never been on the admissions committee. I've sat on many undergraduate committees, but I've never actually been on these committees. I didn't even know what an MMI was until people talk to me about what an application to medical school is like now. You have to have to be very focused and career and work hard, but you still have to have a backup plan. And it's not the end of the world if you don't get into medicine. As I say, I don't know I know what I would have done if I hadn't ultimately gone to medical school. I think I would have just studied linguistics, because I really like languages. And when I was young, I was very good at picking up all kinds of languages. It's a lot harder now, but I'm fascinated by language. So you have to have a backup plan. And I guess, when I retire, or if I retire, I have no immediate plans. I think I will do something in the area of linguistics.
It's really good advice. I think from our previous episodes, many of the medical students that we talked about, one of them did 1 year of law before going into med. One person, I think Ian, he was a chef before he got into medical school. So, and yeah, I agree. Getting into medical school and like getting that rejection letter isn't the end of the world. There is more to life than just getting accepted into med school. There's other things that you can do and you can find a passion for in this world. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. That being said, previously you talked about sort of like how the healthcare system was a lot different during your time, like in the 50s and 60s. You saw diphtheria firsthand, but now you don't really see that now. And I guess you've also seen how the healthcare system sort of improved in a way. I bet there's also things in the healthcare system that could still be improved. Is there something that you think that should be changed in the healthcare system, and what would that be, and why?
That's a very difficult question. When Medicare was developed, the big mistake that I think that happened at that time was pharmacare did not get included in the socialized medicine format that we have here in Canada. And that to me is a huge challenge, because not having a national system that will help us support the cost of the drugs that people have to take, and the more and more expensive drugs, is really putting a lot of our patients at a disadvantage. So, I hope in the future we'll have a system where we will be able to not just support people from all the healthcare costs of when you go for medical stuff, but also from a pharmacare point of view, because more and more diseases are getting treated, but the cost of these treatments are astronomical. So I know, there's lots of committees, and, we, in the speeches from the finance minister, there are plans in the future to develop a national pharmacare system. I hope that actually comes to fruition, because I think that will revolutionize our ability not just to develop new treatments, but actually get them into the hands of the people who need them. So that's that. I know that's a very broad category, but I would really hope that we could do something, because science in Canada, research in Canada, discovery in Canada is amazing. But the translation of discovery into practical treatments that could actually be into the hands of the people is still something that needs a lot of work. We also have problems in Canada in the sense that we have 12 healthcare systems in Canada, 10 provinces, and 13 healthcare systems, and 3 territories. And I would like to see a much stronger federal oversight in terms of policy with some of the new things that are coming with the healthcare system. So those are very broad things that I would like to see for the future. But on a day-to-day basis, that anybody in this world of Canada should not be denied admission to hospital on the basis of whether or not he or she can pay, is something that we must never take for granted.
Absolutely agree. And but unfortunately, of course, politics is pretty complicated. So
yeah.
But I'm no expert in it, but I've had it is taking a lot of my time now and energy, my thinking energy, in terms of I work a lot, from my research career, and now more into advocacy. That's an aspect of my career as a doctor, and dealing with rare diseases in trying to advocate for the patients, especially for those who cannot advocate for themselves. So unfortunately, I'm not a politician, but I really try to forge relationships to try to make an impact on, in terms of advocacy. That's a huge area.
Absolutely. And that's great. And I think that, more people try to do the same, because it's really important, especially like you said, the federal oversight. There should be oversight for everybody, right? So I'll give an example just for insight for our audience. I have family in the Philippines, right? And their politics there is pretty. Let's not get into that, but
It's very complicated.
Yeah, so they do have Pfizer, right, which is of course the more popular and the more talked about and more findings, I guess. I'm not entirely sure about the other. There's some other brand or
There's
vaccines that
quite a few
Philippines.
approved in Canada now. Pfizer, Moderna,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
AstraZeneca, with all its controversy, but Johnson and Johnson. I mean, anyways, carry on. What were you going to say about
I don't know.
vaccines back
It's
home?
Yeah, it's just some people. Pfizer there is really expensive because they don't have the same type of healthcare that we have here, right? Where we have the Manitoba health card, for example, for our province, and so therefore, I was talking to my cousin a couple weeks ago, and she was saying that most of the people there didn't want to take the other vaccine, even though it was free, because people were saying that, oh, after I took it, I got sick, or more cases started emerging, and then they kind of came to a conclusion that, oh, it must be the vaccine, and then I'd rather get the Pfizer, but of course I can't afford it. So
People in Philippines have to pay for the Pfizer vaccine.
yes, yeah, and their healthcare there is kind of, it's really expensive. I could say that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
we are incredibly fortunate how the research world has developed these vaccines as quickly as they can, but getting them into the arms of people who need them, in a cost-effective way, has been very, very challenging. Do you follow that argument about eliminating the patent protection as a way of lowering the costs of the vaccines, particularly in third world countries? Have you followed that at all? Because, I mean, obviously the companies who are developing the vaccine have patent protection, and rightly so, in the sense that, they've done the discovery, and but they are making a tremendous amount of money, and the other countries do not have the opportunity to develop the vaccines because it's under patent protection for Pfizer. Not that the countries would have the capability, even if the patent was removed, to have the raw materials and the technical know-how to develop the vaccines. But there's two schools of thought. If we eliminated the patent protection, some people feel that the third world countries would be able, in a much more accelerated fashion, to be able to generate and provide vaccine to its people. And there's other people who feel that, if we eliminated the patent protection, we're going to eliminate, the desire of companies, to develop new products, because they don't have the patent protection, and therefore their profit margin, might go down. It's a difficult world we live in. Difficult world.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize. Well, I know that there's not the amount of vaccine that's going to third world countries is not what it should be. But I didn't realize that what went there actually had to be paid for by the consumer. But I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, even in just general hospitals, like, it's kind of like a private hospital where you're not covered for anything and you have to pay for anything you use. So yeah, that's kind of how it works there, from what I hear from my family members that tell me stories from there. So yeah, I think on paper that sounds great, though, they're removing the patent.
Well, there's a couple of schools of thought on everything, right?
Yeah.
This thought and that thought, and the truth is probably somewhere in between, right?
Mm-hmm. But I guess it's our job to, try to, I don't know. Well, we got to figure it out somehow.
Our job here is to try to encourage people to be vaccinated.
Yes.
Please
be
get
vaccinated, guys. Yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even hurt. So
no.
Maybe a little bit.
just a little bit, but like it'll be gone tomorrow. So
yes.
So that being said, we would like to take you now to a little game that we just started this season. It's our season 2 because it's our second series.
Yeah.
So, and we kind of have I guess it's tradition now where it's just last minute. So it's our rapid fire question segment where
is it getting to the end now that I have
close to the end?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just quick, first thing that comes up to your mind, just kind of the simpler questions. So whenever you're ready, Dr. Greenberg.
Oh God, should I be nervous?
No.
No. It's very simple.
Should you? I'm not sure.
Fire. quick rapid fire question.
I don't get too nervous, except before having to talk on podcasts.
You're doing well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we go. I will start the rapid fire question now. So first question for you, Dr. Greenberg, is if you could trade lives with anyone for a day, celebrity, anyone you admire, who would it be and why?
Oh boy. So you're supposed to answer the first thing that comes into your mind. The very first thing that came into my mind was Alan Alda from MASH.
Oh.
I love that show. I still, and in fact, early days in the COVID, when I was watching too much TV, I would always watch the MASH reruns. But that's what came into my mind. He was an excellent surgeon. He was opinionated, but he had his heart in the right place. So I know it seems funny to pick him. And I even follow him. Do you follow his podcast? And do you follow him?
Oh, I didn't know.
I don't personally follow him.
Let me back up a bit. Do you know who Alan Alda is?
I'm not familiar.
I'm familiar with MASH, though. I've seen a couple episodes, but
I'm really aging myself. That's true. Well, you better get me to the next question if you don't know who Alan Alda is. But you'd like him.
All right, I'll look that up for sure. Do you know the name of the podcast?
Oh, I think if you just Google or search on Twitter, Alan Alda, it'll come up.
For sure. All right, so our next question. If a movie was made of your life, what genre would it be and who would play you?
Oh my God, okay. It would be a documentary, I think.
Okay.
And people have, when I was younger, people said that I looked like Liza Minnelli, but you probably have never heard of Liza Minnelli, right?
Well, when I'm editing this, I will put up a picture and a comparison of.
The name sounds familiar, but
have you ever heard of Judy Garland?
Yes.
Yeah. Her daughter was Liza Minnelli.
Oh, okay.
People said that she's an actress, and people said that I looked like her. But the one person whose life I really admire and emulate was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So I would like a documentary, and maybe someone who has played Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her documentary that's been made on her could play me.
Awesome. I'll definitely look that up.
Now, you know who Ruth Bader Ginsburg was, right? No.
I'll definitely look it up and research.
You have to read about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and you have to watch her documentaries. She was a Supreme Court judge.
Oh yeah. And she just recently
passed away.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Well, we won't get into U.S. politics, but she has an incredible following, an incredible, powerful woman.
I just forgot what her last name was, but yeah, I'm familiar with
RBG, Ruth Bader.
Yeah.
And my initials are CRG. So some people have said that I'm a little bit like RBG and CRG, and I take that as a supreme compliment.
I think I remember now. I've seen her picture, and I just got it now.
She was incredible. And the documentaries and movies made about her life are called RBG. Well worth watching.
I'll for sure watch that docuseries or documentary film. Yeah.
She faced tremendous adversity in her life. And we talked a lot tonight about adversity. And she met all the challenges that she was faced with, you know. In the end, she could not survive to see Donald Trump out of the White House, but she would have liked to
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a great day for her.
It would have been.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she was watching from the Red Rock.
The Red Rock, whatever
Yeah.
that is. So, next question. What are 3 words that describe your profession?
Caring, equitable, challenging.
All right.
Would you like to get more in detail for why you picked those words?
Well, first and foremost, I'm also a pediatrician. And in addition to being a geneticist. And one of the areas that was so important when I was doing my pediatric training and early in my career was developing the concept of family-centered care and being caring and empathetic for your patients. So that obviously is very much of my motto. And at the same time, you know, I have spent many years as a practicing physician, as practicing subspecialist, but I also have had the good fortune of having some leadership positions. And one of the areas in leadership that I learned a great deal and tried to understand is the issue of equity and how our system is not equitable, and how can I improve the system to ensure that it is more equitable, that everybody, regardless of race, color, sexual orientation, has the same opportunity as everybody else. And that's, to me, what we have to strive for in achieving an equitable world, a level playing field for everybody. And challenging is because in medicine, if you have a career as a doctor, as a researcher, you have to continue to challenge yourself to stay current, to study hard, and to work hard, because the people to whom we report, our patients, you know, deserve the best. And so you have to continue to challenge yourself to stay up to date and be the best that you can be. So, I mean, these are the 3 words in your rapid fire thing that came to me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing those 3 words. All right. So our next question, if you had access to a time machine, where and when would you go? Like which era?
Well, that's a real hard one. Like I wouldn't go back to prehistoric times. I wouldn't go back to, you know, biblical times. I wouldn't go back to the Middle Ages for sure. I'd probably go back to the turn of the 20th century, like in the early 1900s. I'm particularly interested in, you know, the awakening and the acquisition of rights for women, just the right to vote, you know?
That'd be awesome.
So I think I would like to be able to live through that era and to see how involved I would get and to see if I would take that up as a cause. I don't know what. I mean, I take so much for granted now. We all do. But to live at a time in an era in North America, in Canada, in Manitoba, when we didn't have any of the things we take for granted now, I think I would like to live through that era.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be really, really cool to be in that era.
It must have been very challenging
Yeah.
to be a suffragette and live in that era.
Yeah, very challenging.
And thank you once again for sharing your answer for that question. So the next one is, what have you done in your entire life, I guess, or to make it easier, in your profession that you are most proud of?
mean, in the broad category, it's patient care. It's I am most proud of being able to put patients first virtually all the time and and live up to the tenets of my profession. I mean, I have specific examples when it's been particularly satisfying, but over as a general rule, it has to be patient care. I'm particularly proud of the being able to live up to what I felt were the ideals of putting patients and families first. Um, you know, I think you mentioned in the introduction that I've been so privileged to get awards, which have been overwhelming and very humbling to me. But the most important thing about these awards, and every one I've gotten, when I've had to go to the awards ceremony, not had to go, when I go to the awards ceremony, my patients would come with their families, unsolicited. When I was inducted into the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame, this was 2 years ago, before COVID, I had several patients who actually, at their own expense, bought tickets to go to the ceremony to see me inducted. The same thing happened here at the Order of Manitoba. I remember that. Once when I got the RH Foundation Award, sitting in the front seat was one of the very first couples that I met when I started my practice here in I think it was 1980, but this couple was their baby, whom I diagnosed, was in 1982, and their baby didn't make it. Okay. That baby would make it today if that baby were born today. And they were in the front row seat when they had heard that I was giving a public lecture. They came because of course, they never forgot their daughter, but they were just so happy that our work over the years had led for a specific effective treatment for this disorder. So like every award that I've gotten, they're particularly meaningful for me because I associate them with the patients who've come to share, in that celebration. And it is incredibly meaningful and touching to me.
Wow. Absolutely. And, I really want to just say right now that I appreciate, professionals such as yourself in the medical field. My dad, he's a dialysis nurse. Well, he's an LPN. And there's similar stories, like not quite as, grand as the awards and ceremonies, but he works up north in a small town called Ashern. And we,
it's not that far up north in the Interlake.
2 hours. Yeah, Interlake. Yeah. So, we get, sometimes he would come home with like loads of fish and like meat. And then we just wonder where all of these, fish come from. Oh, my patient was fishing yesterday and they just wanted to give me some fish. So it's really great. Awesome. I think that's one of the rewards of, working in that profession, because, you can really tell that you're helping people, and that, people appreciate that. And I think, we need more professionals such as yourself that help people out and find passion in that.
Yeah.
Well, as I said at the beginning of our interview, the reason I enjoy my work so much is I can only really enjoy my work if I know that I'm helping support the health of others and the work of others. So, that's to me what medicine's all about.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. We are on our last rapid fire segment. Last rapid fire question. So the question is, how do you define happiness?
Happiness to me would be defined that when I leave this world, I'll be very happy if I am remembered as a good and caring person. then I'll be happy. That's the most important to me. I want to be remembered as a good person, as a good mother, as a good grandmother, but mostly as a good person overall. That to me would make me very happy, to be remembered as a good person.
It's a good definition.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And once again, thank you for sharing that. I think that should be the definition on the dictionary. We should put that on Webster's or something. So that concludes our rapid fire question segment. Thank you for participating. I mean, you don't have a choice because you're an interviewee. But
it was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is basically our conclusion of the interview. But one last question. We like to ask this after every episode of our series, because most of our target audience is youth in high school or early university who may be aspiring as well to become a physician or professional in STEM, right? So my question to you now, Dr. Greenberg, and this is our last episode of this series. So this is a lot of pressure for you. Just kidding. But what advice can you give our youth that may be listening right now? And we have spoken for over an hour now. What advice can you give them in their pursuit of their career in STEM, or just even any career, whether they're, no matter what stage they are in their academic career right now? What can you say to our youths?
Well, I kind of alluded to this before. I think if you have a dream and something that you want to do, by and large, you should be able to achieve that. But you're going to need to work hard. There's no easy way out. You have to work hard. And a profession like mine in medicine, it's lifelong learning and lifelong work. Incredibly satisfying, but you have to work hard. At the same time, you have to take some chances. And if you see that fork in the road, take it. You never know where it's going to lead you. And don't look back. When you make a decision, don't second guess yourself. Don't look back. Follow the dreams to the best of your ability, but perhaps have a backup plan.
Great advice.
Really, really good advice. And I think that is a really good way to end our entire series on the Med podcast. So thank you so much, Dr. Cheryl Rockman-Greenberg, for joining us once again, and for all of your responses, your advice, just everything for today. Thank you so much.
I just want to,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And it's really inspiring to hear your stories. And I learned so much and like advice I can follow in my life as well. So thank you for being a part of it.
I usually end often my talks to students that people can contact me at any time for anything. You have my email address. You can share it. I am the same person at work and at home, but if people feel that they want to reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to speak with them.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Cheryl Rockman-Greenberg. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. We are on our second podcast series. Can't believe we're finished season 2 already. Thank you so much for listening. And if you haven't already, remember to follow us at LTS_U of M. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. when you follow us, you can be updated on our upcoming events. We actually have a high school summer camp coming up this summer, so check that out. We got a registration form on there. And feel free to follow and subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and more. And this is also going to be on YouTube. So, well, if you're watching this, you're already on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You broke the fourth wall.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thank you so much.